Imagine this. You wake up every morning with a burning sense of urgency, a restless energy that propels you out of bed before your alarm even sounds. Your mind races with ambitious plans, deadlines to meet, goals to crush. You are, by every external measure, the epitome of a driven person. Yet, as you sit at your desk, staring at the tasks that should excite you, something feels fundamentally wrong. The fire that should fuel your actions has somehow transformed into a hollow mechanical obligation. You're moving, but you're not truly alive. You're achieving, but you're not truly satisfied. This is the great paradox of our time. A psychological limbo that Carl Jung would have recognized as one of the most profound crises of the human condition. You are driven yet completely unmotivated, successful yet spiritually bankrupt, busy yet profoundly empty. How is this possible? How can someone be simultaneously propelled forward by an invisible force while feeling utterly disconnected from their own desires? Here's what makes this phenomenon so unsettling. It's not laziness masquerading as ambition, nor is it simple burnout that rest can cure. It's something far more sinister, a fundamental disconnection between who you think you are and who you actually are at the deepest level of your being. Jung called this the shadow of the ego, the parts of ourselves we've buried so deep that they've begun to sabotage us from within. But why does this internal civil war exist? Why do so many of us find ourselves trapped in this psychological purgatory, where our conscious minds demand action, while our souls resist with every fiber of their being? The answer lies not in your lack of willpower or your faulty goal-setting strategy. It lies in a much darker truth about human nature that most people are terrified to confront. Have you ever wondered if the goals you're chasing aren't really yours at all? If the ambitions that keep you awake at night are nothing more than elaborate disguises for someone else's expectations, society's programming, or your own desperate attempt to fill a void that can never be filled through external achievement? Jung's revolutionary insight suggests that this internal conflict may not be a bug in the system. It may be a feature, a psychological alarm bell screaming at you to pay attention to something you've been ignoring for far too long. According to Carl Jung, this internal conflict may reveal a deeper struggle between your conscious goals and your unconscious desires. But why are you stuck in limbo? In his insightful exploration of the psyche, Jung offers a profound perspective on why many of us feel driven yet unmotivated. His analysis suggests that being stuck in limbo may not be a failure, but a necessary phase of personal transformation. Stay with me, because the last insight we'll explore is the most powerful. It might just rewire the way you see your life and your choices forever. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, leave a like if this resonates with you, and share your thoughts in the comments. What you're about to discover could change the way you understand yourself, your habits, and your future. Let's begin this journey into the depths of the human psyche, where your greatest enemy and your greatest ally are waiting to be discovered. The root of this psychological limbo runs deeper than you imagine. What you're experiencing isn't a personal failing. It's the inevitable result of what Jung called the collective unconscious, waging war against your individual consciousness. From the moment you drew your first breath, you've been programmed not just by your parents, but by centuries of collective human conditioning that demands you pursue goals that have nothing to do with your authentic self. Jung understood something that modern psychology has largely forgotten. We are not individuals choosing our own paths. We are walking compilations of ancestral patterns, societal expectations, and unconscious programming that masquerades as personal desire. The goals you think you want, the career you're chasing, the lifestyle you're building, the success you're desperately trying to achieve, these may not be yours at all. They belong to what Jung called the persona, the mask you wear to survive in a world that punishes authenticity and rewards conformity. But here's where it gets darker. The unconscious mind, Jung discovered, is not passive. It's actively sabotaging your conscious efforts, because it recognizes something your ego refuses to acknowledge. You're living a lie. Every time you force yourself to pursue a goal that doesn't align with your deeper nature, your unconscious creates resistance. This isn't procrastination or laziness. It's your psyche's desperate attempt to protect you from a life of meaningless achievement. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this coming over a century ago, when he warned of the last man, the individual so domesticated by society that he has forgotten how to want anything authentic. The last man is comfortable, safe, and utterly hollow. He pursues goals not because they ignite his soul but because they provide social validation and security. Sound familiar? You may be living as Nietzsche's last man, driven by borrowed desires, while your authentic self slowly dies of neglect. Arthur Schopenhauer added another layer to this understanding, with his concept of the will to live, the blind, irrational force that drives all human behavior. According to Schopenhauer, most of what we call motivation is actually this primal will expressing itself through socially acceptable channels. But when your conscious goals conflict with this deeper will, you experience the very paralysis you're feeling now. You're driven because the will demands action, but unmotivated because the action you're taking serves the persona, not the authentic self. Jung took this insight even further. He realized that modern civilization has created a perfect storm of psychological fragmentation. We live in societies that reward external achievement, while simultaneously disconnecting us from our inner lives. We're taught to ignore our dreams, suppress our instincts, and trust our rational minds above all else. The result? A generation of people who are highly functional on the surface but spiritually bankrupt underneath. This is why traditional motivation techniques fail you. They're trying to energize a persona that your unconscious mind has already rejected. They're attempting to fuel a machine that your deeper self is actively trying to shut down. The harder you push with willpower and discipline, the stronger the internal resistance becomes. You're not fighting laziness, you're fighting your own psyche's attempt to wake you up from the collective trance. The hidden problem isn't that you lack motivation. The hidden problem is that you've been motivated toward the wrong things for so long, that your authentic self has gone underground, expressing itself only through resistance, depression, and that gnawing sense that something is fundamentally wrong with your life. Jung called this psychological underground the shadow, and until you confront it, you'll remain trapped in this limbo between action and authenticity. But the consequences of this psychological split run far deeper than mere dissatisfaction. What most people don't realize is that living in this limbo between drive and motivation creates a cascading series of neurological and psychological effects that slowly reshape your entire reality. Your brain, confused by the constant contradiction between action and authentic desire, begins to rewire itself in ways that make the problem progressively worse. Neuroscience has revealed something terrifying. When you repeatedly force yourself to pursue goals that don't align with your deeper nature, you create what researchers call cognitive dissonance stress. This isn't ordinary stress that comes and goes. It's a chronic low-level psychological tension that rewires your neural pathways. Your dopamine system, designed to reward authentic achievement, begins to malfunction. You lose the ability to feel genuine satisfaction from your accomplishments, because your brain recognizes, at a biological level, that these achievements are hollow. This neurological confusion manifests in ways you might not even recognize. That persistent anxiety that follows you throughout the day, it's not about your workload, it's your nervous system's alarm response to living inauthentically. The chronic fatigue that no amount of sleep can cure. It's the energetic cost of maintaining a persona that conflicts with your true nature. The decision paralysis that strikes when you try to choose between options that should excite you. It's your unconscious mind refusing to participate in its own betrayal. Jung understood that this internal fracture doesn't remain internal for long. It begins to poison every aspect of your external life through what he called projection. Unable to confront the war within yourself, you begin to see this conflict everywhere around you. You become hypercritical of others who seem genuinely motivated, dismissing them as naive or fake. You develop contempt for people who appear to be living authentically, because their very existence reminds you of what you've sacrificed. Your relationships suffer because you can't connect authentically with others, when you're not even connected to yourself. The cultural consequences are even more devastating. We live in a society filled with millions of people trapped in this same psychological limbo, all pretending to be motivated, while secretly dying inside. This collective inauthenticity has created what sociologists call performative productivity, a culture where everyone is busy, but nothing meaningful gets accomplished. We celebrate hustle culture while depression rates skyrocket. We worship success while suicide rates among high achievers continue to climb. We've built an entire civilization on the foundation of people doing things they don't actually want to do for reasons they don't fully understand. Here's what makes this phenomenon so insidious. It's self-perpetuating. The more disconnected you become from your authentic desires, the more you rely on external validation to feel valuable. But external validation can never satisfy the part of you that craves authentic expression. So you work harder, achieve more, accumulate greater success, all while the void inside you grows larger. You become addicted to the very thing that's killing you, the pursuit of goals that serve your persona rather than your soul. This creates what psychologists call a hedonic treadmill of inauthenticity. Each achievement provides a brief moment of relief from the internal tension, followed by an even deeper sense of emptiness. You raise the stakes, pursue bigger goals, work longer hours, but the satisfaction remains elusive, because you're trying to fill an authentic need with inauthentic achievements. It's like trying to cure thirst by drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. The most tragic consequence of all is what Jung called the unlived life. Every day you spend pursuing goals that don't truly belong to you is a day stolen from the person you could have become. Your authentic self, starved of expression and ignored by your conscious mind, begins to atrophy. The dreams you once had, the creative impulses you once felt, the unique contribution you came here to make, all of this begins to fade, until you can barely remember who you were before you learned to want what others wanted for you. But perhaps the most dangerous consequence is this: you begin to believe that this limbo is normal. You start to think that everyone feels this way, that the conflict between drive and motivation is just part of adult life. You accept the numbness, the mechanical pursuit of meaningless goals, the chronic dissatisfaction, as the price of being responsible and mature. You become what Jung feared most: a person who has successfully adapted to a sick society, mistaking your adaptation for health, while your authentic self dies in silence. This is the trap that keeps millions of people stuck. They don't realize that their lack of motivation isn't a personal failing, but their psyche's intelligent response to a fundamentally inauthentic life. The solution isn't more discipline or better goal-setting technique. The solution requires something far more radical: a complete rebellion against the forces that created this internal division in the first place. The path out of this psychological prison requires what Jung called the confrontation with the shadow, a radical act of rebellion that most people are too terrified to attempt. This isn't about positive thinking or life coaching platitude. This is about dismantling the very foundation of who you think you are, and discovering who you actually are beneath the layers of conditioning, expectation, and fear. The first act of rebellion is the most counterintuitive. You must stop trying to motivate yourself. Yes, you heard that correctly. The very effort to manufacture motivation for goals that don't authentically belong to you is what's keeping you trapped. Jung understood that the psyche has its own intelligence, its own timing, its own agenda. When you force motivation through willpower and discipline, you're essentially declaring war on your own unconscious mind. And in that war, the unconscious always wins. It just takes its time doing so. Instead, you must begin what Jung called active imagination, a process of dialogue with the parts of yourself you've been ignoring. This means paying attention to your resistance, rather than fighting it. When you feel unmotivated, instead of pushing through, ask yourself, what is this resistance trying to tell me? Your lack of motivation isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's your psyche's way of protecting you from living someone else's life. But here's where it gets revolutionary. You must be willing to disappoint everyone. The goals you've been pursuing, the identity you've been maintaining, the version of success you've been chasing, most of it has been shaped by other people's expectations. Your parents, your peers, your culture, your social media feed. They've all contributed to a vision of who you should be that may have nothing to do with who you actually are. Breaking free requires the courage to let these external voices down in service of your authentic self. Jung found inspiration in the alchemists of medieval times, who understood that true transformation requires what they called mortification, a symbolic death of the old self. You cannot become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you think you should. This psychological death is terrifying, because it means releasing the identity that has provided you with social approval, financial security, and a sense of place in the world. But it's only through this symbolic death that your authentic self can be reborn. Consider the historical examples of those who chose this path. Van Gogh abandoned a conventional career in art, dealing, and the church to pursue a vision that the world initially rejected. He died poor and unknown, but his authentic expression transformed how humanity sees beauty. Nietzsche gave up a prestigious academic position to pursue philosophical insights that his contemporaries thought were the ravings of a madman. His authentic pursuit of truth revolutionized human thought. Jung himself broke with Freud and the established psychoanalytic community
to explore ideas that seemed mystical and unscientific, ultimately creating a new understanding of the human psyche. The rebellion begins with what Jung termed individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are, rather than who others expect you to be. This requires developing what he called conscious suffering, the willingness to feel the full weight of your authentic desires, even when they conflict with your practical obligation. Most people avoid this suffering by staying busy, pursuing safe goals, and maintaining the illusion that their persona is their true self. But conscious suffering is the price of psychological freedom. Here's the practical rebellion. Start saying no to opportunities that excite your ego, but leave your soul unmoved. Begin small. When someone asks you to take on a project that looks good on paper but feels dead inside, practice the radical act of declining. When you feel pressure to pursue a goal because it's smart or practical, but it doesn't ignite anything authentic within you, choose the discomfort of disappointing others over the agony of betraying yourself. The most powerful tool in this rebellion is what Jung called holding the tension of opposites. Instead of trying to resolve the conflict between drive and motivation through force, learn to sit with the paradox. You can be driven and unmotivated simultaneously because you're in transition between an inauthentic life and an authentic one. This limbo isn't a problem to be solved. It's a chrysalis in which your true self is forming. But here's the warning Jung would give you. This path will make you dangerous to those who are still trapped in their own personas. Your authentic expression will threaten others who have sacrificed their truth for security. Your willingness to pursue what genuinely moves you will trigger those who have convinced themselves that passion is impractical and authenticity is a luxury. You must be prepared for resistance, not just from within, but from the world around you. The final act of rebellion is perhaps the most radical. You must learn to trust your own psyche more than external authority. This means paying attention to your dreams, honoring your irrational impulses, and following the thread of what genuinely fascinates you, even when it doesn't make logical sense. Jung discovered that the unconscious mind has access to wisdom that the rational mind cannot reach. Your authentic motivation isn't found in your head. It's found in the depths of your being that most people are afraid to explore. This rebellion isn't about becoming selfish or irresponsible. It's about becoming responsible to your authentic self, rather than to the expectations of others. It's about discovering that your greatest contribution to the world comes not from pursuing what you think you should want, but from fully expressing what you actually are. The world doesn't need another person living someone else's life. It needs you living yours.